Hi guys, how's everyone? It's Friday, end of one of the week, and I was reading a book this morning. It's called Ancient Secrets of a Master Healer. It's the second time I've read it, and there was a section in there about this lovely thing called ego. I'm going to do something a little bit cliche at the moment, so bear with me. And I know I don't like cliches, and in fact I hate things. But I'm going to define ego as per Google Dictionary. I think purely because there's a lot of confusion about what this word is, what it means, and I see us as coaches, and I see people of spiritual nature, I see people with educations talking about ego a lot. We use the word so freely that we've never stopped to actually think, hang on a second, does the average man on the street here, who's probably suffering more than most of us, even understand what this word means? Just because it's in 1,000 books and just because we hear it on the news and it's freely given and freely shared, it doesn't actually mean we've delved into the definition of it from everybody's perspective. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to see what flows from it. I don't really have an agenda like I don't with most of these. I could make a real ass of myself on this one. There's a little bit of fear, if I'm honest, about how this will come out. So let's just start. So Google Dictionary, ego. Noun, a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance. I think that bit we sort of understand. From a psychoanalysis perspective, it's the part of the mind that mediates between the conscious and the unconscious, and it is responsible for reality testing and a sense of personal identity. Okay, that's the definition. I think the first one's relatively simple, but almost menial. It doesn't really have a hell of a lot of depth of understanding. I don't think it gives you anything to ponder or go away from. The second one, I think for anyone of a spiritual nature, a coach, or anyone who's got an education in the ego, it's a really cool definition, and we go, whoa, that sounds awesome. But again, we're not touching on the fact that the bulk of the world doesn't have an understanding of what an ego is, what it means, and how silently and how sneaky it can be in governing our life every day. So, for me, what is ego? I'm going to speak from my personal experience, and I'm going to talk about the damage my ego has done to my life and see where we end up with that. So ego for me, I first encountered or understood it as a young man because I grew up very scared. So I introduced myself to this thing called ego, and I called it anger. And I used anger as one of my first outward extensions of ego to make me look tough. I wanted to be strong. I mean, I'm 47 and I look pretty young. When I was a teenager, I looked like a 5-year-old. And so I needed to use that ego to extend outwardly from myself and make myself look like I was stronger than I actually was. That was my first introduction. Then women came along, and then I got to my second introduction of what the ego was and what it meant for me. And that was now looking strong, but also being Mr. Charisma. Now, ego in this form is manipulative because all it wants is what it wants. It doesn't care for others. It doesn't take empathy into consideration. It doesn't connect with others in a sincere way. So as we move through life, we've got the career side, and then there's the career ego. It took me to incredible places. It took me to amazing achievements. Running the biggest events company in the Middle East, I put on a concert for every major musical artist, sporting star, rugby sevens, richest golf tournaments, horse racing events in the world. We're supposed to do the first Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, but because of a relationship and the ego taking hold of my life, I ran off to Africa and didn't do it. So I guess what I'm trying to share here is, as an everyday guy, these are the manifestations, or these are the parts that ego can play. The upside to ego, as I've said in the little blurb I've typed there, is it was the ambition that took me to the Middle East. It was the ambition that took me to be an elephant tracker. It took me to becoming an elephant behavior specialist. It took me to trapping and relocating problem lions out of conflict zones in Africa. It took me places that most people could only ever dream of. But in that journey of all that ambition, I was blind. I broke relationships. I lived without respect for myself and for lack of respect for myself and others. I drank too much. I used drugs. I used relationships to make myself feel better. So I guess what I am is a good walking definition or example of the two sides of what ego is capable of doing. And what I watch in everyday life for people as they move along in their not crazy lives like I've lived is ego has this very secretive or very sneaky way of governing the very important parts of our lives. it takes from us while giving to us, and that can be a beautiful thing if you understand it. But my motivation for sharing on this live today was to talk about the average guy on the street, the people who don't know what ego is, and they don't understand its power in their lives. So if I look back on that definition of ego, a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance, I'm going to ask this question of you is, what do you see when you look in a mirror? Because the answer you give yourself is coming from that little thing, that little three-letter word called ego. And so what I guess I'm hoping to do with these definitions, or these talking about things like the ego, is get you to question the limitations and fears you might have in your life, and start to understand that they live in one place, and that is up here. We are, as humans, beings of action, beings of solving problems and of solutions, of momentum of growth and of change. Yet we seem to have allowed this thing that really could be a beautiful part of us, this ego, to take control in very dangerous ways. It drives fears and limits our growth. It is the king of resistance and doubt. So whenever you feel that momentary tightening in your stomach and that inability to face something that you're scared of, something like saying sorry to your partner or to your family, connecting better with your children because you've just snapped at them and you're now feeling a little bit of guilt, that resistance and that fear, that's that ego part of you that's saying you don't want to be embarrassed, you don't want to expose yourself, and you don't want to be vulnerable. And I saw just this morning a post where, we were talking about vulnerability last night with my good friend Leon, and we've got people questioning, men especially, being vulnerable is weak. How can you tell me that being vulnerable is not weak? Well, vulnerability is a superpower. Anyone who can jump on this and do what I'm doing right here, and there are many who do it a lot better than me, is showing their vulnerability, is exposing themselves to ridicule and embarrassment, questioning of their opinion, of their perspective. There's great strength required to do this, trust me. For all the things I've done, all the elephants and the lions and going to prison twice and all these things that I managed to achieve in my life add up nothing to the challenges I'm facing every day now. And the major one is sitting in front of this camera talking to you. Secondly is, how do I father from 13,000 kilometers away, and how do I get my babies back to me without hurting their mother and without upsetting and allowing my anger and my ego, which is driven by my fear, to damage the relationship with her. So when you're facing fears in your life, uncontrollable ones, the ones that are stopping you from taking a step forward into that fear, the thing that is in the back of your head saying, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there, that's uncomfortable, you'll have to expose yourself, you'll get embarrassed, if you make a mistake, you're going to be laughed at. If you see that, if you face those parts, and if you're prepared to challenge that ego, you can start to integrate it and balance it back into your life, because those things in you, those parts of you that are saying no, 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 that's where your growth is. Those challenges and those obstacles are where your gold lies. That is where you'll come out the other side, understanding a deeper level of yourself. You'll become a better person and a better human. You'll become a better partner, a better mother, a better father, a better brother, a better sister. You'll become a better worker. All because you've just understood a little bit more about this three-letter word called ego. I think I'll leave it there for now. I hope that I instigate some questions here, because this ego thing is really a big deal, and it's very much perspective. If you ask 10 people to define the word ego, you're likely to get 10 very different definitions. What I want to do here is not talk about what I want and what I've lived through, as much as I want to challenge you to talk about what you see as the ego's effect in your life. How does it govern your life? How does it drive the fears in your life? How does it separate and disconnect you from the things and those that you love? The aim here is not to do and live the way I have. It's to understand how you do, and for us to amalgamate or to combine this so we have a conscious connection together to learn together, so that we can all share, because my perspective and opinion isn't going to help every single person, but yours might be the one that helps that person beside you that's silently suffering or not being able to understand that three-letter word called ego. Thanks, guys.